Also want to invite you all, if you catch on to the refrain, the chorus, you're more than welcome to sing along with us by the time the song is over. So, yeah. My prayer is that this fire, it's like the breath of our ancestors, that this fire is like the transforming source in our lives. My prayer is that somebody's soul would catch on fire, burning till we're healed and whole.
Wish somebody's soul would catch on fire, catch on fire, catch on fire. I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire, burning and healed and whole. I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire, catch on fire, catch on fire. I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire, burn it up and healed and whole.
Some run from it, some run to it. How we just now feeling that fire when we already done been through it? Some burn flags, crosses, and Bibles. This fire burns inside us to fight for survival. Some share blood with fire from rifles and rifles. This fire comes because it's time to ignite a revival. This that Holy Ghost fire. Set it all, make your whole soul light up. Inspire the sick and tired to get up and fight for the life till there ain't no more sick and tired. Not a violent course, but a gentle guiding force, like a vibrant torch giving light and warmth. Not a riot, but a rising from love as a gentle guiding force. Come and hit me with the chorus.
Wish somebody's soul would catch on fire, catch on fire,
Need that fire. Come on.
catch on fire.
I wish.
Somebody's soul would catch on fire and burn it till they're healed and whole.
See it again, come on.
I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire, catch on fire, catch on fire. I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire, burn until you're healed and whole.
Some things we need to retrieve and some things we need to leave. If there's an upheaval, then there's some things we need to upheave. If we're limited or free by our beliefs, then what do we even believe? And what the necessary means to let our people breathe. Burn your grief and rage into the flames of liberation. Burn your fear and shame in the flames of reparations. Each flame is an anguish that can be tamed and contained in a language. It burns away our chains and cages till all that remains is love. What needs to die, and why won't we let it? What needs new life to find resurrection? It's the process of perfection, and we're not perfected yet. Why must death be the prerequisite? It may burn, but it's not meant to burn us. It may hurt, but it's not meant to hurt us. It's meant to free us from our burdens, refine, purify, and purge us till the fruit beneath the root reemerges. We won't be consumed. We'll blossom and bloom like a butterfly who's lost a cocoon. We will rise like God gave Noah the rainbow sign. No more water. It's fire this time. Sing that together, y'all.
Wish somebody's soul would catch on fire. We catch on fire. We catch on fire. I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire and burn until you're healed and whole. Woo! I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire. Catch on fire. Catch on fire. I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire. Burn until we're healed and whole. Come on! I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire. Catch on fire. Catch on fire. I wish somebody's soul would catch on fire. Burn until we're healed and whole.
We all got the spark. Ice came to fan the flame. Let's get it. Let's get it.
And where's our friend? There he is. Kage Gabo, the man who walks eternally, is in the house. So come forward as if the man who walks eternally is in the house.
Aho, bonjour in denoi magnadok. Anin, kage gabo indigenous, mikanak and dudem. Mikanak wajawing and dunjaba, beshoga kabakong and danongom. And get you migwech wendum, jayaya no oma, migwech bijayeg, migwech bizendayeg, misa go get minoki shigak. And again, that's a traditional Ojibwe protocol greeting. I said hello, all of my relatives. My name is Kage Gabo. I'm also James Vuklich. I'm Turtle Clan. I'm a descendant of Turtle Mountain. I live close to Minneapolis today, Kakabakong, the place of the falls. I'm so delighted to be here with you all this morning. I wanted to thank you all for coming out and for being here and for listening, and I said, it is indeed a good day. There's this concept that I'm so excited to share with you all. It is this concept that shows up internationally in indigenous country, this idea of 7 generations. And again, it shows up with the Lakota, it shows up with the Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois, and also I really want to stress that I'm sharing an Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, Nakaway, Chippewa perspective of this. So, if we look at the generations in Ojibwe, our first generation, it's Nin, I, me, myself. Then I have my parents. We have Nus, and we have Ninga. Nus is our ancient word for my father. Ninga is the ancient word for my mother. We have Nimishomis, my grandfather, and I don't know if we have any Menopolitans who are listening today or who are watching. Nokomis. In Minneapolis, in South Minneapolis, we have a small lake in the middle of the city called Lake Nokomis. In Ojibwe, we pronounce it Nokomis, and that means my grandmother. So when I said that is an ancient word in the language, I think we can make a strong scientific case that when you hear that sound noko in the beginning for my grandmother, nokumis, you are listening to a sound that dates back to prior to the ending of the last ice age. That meant where I live in Minneapolis, when that was covered by a mountain of ice a mile high, before Gitchigami, the great sea of the Anishinaabe, Lake Superior, existed, there was someone who saw saber-toothed tigers, woolly mammoths. They saw misamik, that's our Ojibwe word for giant beaver, a beaver the size of a mukwa, of a black bear. And if you can imagine mukwa at that time, on his hind feet, he stood 11 to 12 feet tall. I'm 6'3". If you can imagine sticking another of me on top of myself, you get an idea of how huge some of these megafauna were. And there was someone who saw all of these beings, who called his or her grandmother that sound noko, my grandmother. And we don't know what the ending was, nokomatha, nokomala, nokomathe, but we know that that first sound was there. And I love sharing that with people, because so often our history, indigenous people's history, will begin with contact. And that's such an important part of our story. And you know, in the month of November, we celebrate that quite a bit, but despite being a very important chapter in an epic saga that goes back thousands upon thousands of years, it is but a mere chapter. And so I'm so excited to have this opportunity to share some of these very ancient words with you this morning. So we've gone myself, my parents, my grandparents, and then we have the word for my great-grandparents. And Donakobitchigan. That can mean my great-grandfather, it can mean my great-grandmother. But it doesn't just mean that. It has in it a morpheme. And a morpheme, it's as scientific as we will get with it this morning. It's the smallest part of a word that carries meaning. And there's a period in my life where I became absolutely fascinated by morphemes. Maybe I'll introduce myself a little more in depth right now. Kagegabo indigenous cause. My Ojibwe name is Kagegabo. It means he who stands eternally. I'm also James Vuklich. And I didn't hear the Ojibwe language until I was a 25-year-old man. In fact, when I first began studying at City College in Minneapolis, I studied film and video. I was fortunate at the high school I went to, we had a television studio in there, so I learned how to make small films, how to work with TV, but it wasn't my vocation. I had studied English literature after that, and then I studied French, and I became utterly enamored with the French language, and I decided the very best way to learn it was to go through complete immersion. So I packed up, I moved to Quebec, I studied French immersion there for a year. I became fluent in the language, and when I came back to the United States, I had every intention of becoming a French teacher. And I went back to school, and I had to take one more course to fulfill my course load so I could qualify for loans, grants, and I saw Ojibwe was offered. Now my mother's Ojibwe, my grandmother's Ojibwe, yet I had never heard the language. And I thought, I'll give this a try. I've studied French, Italian, a little bit of Latin in middle school. And I recall going to the course, opening up the book, Portage Lake by the late Modkeg, and seeing this word, Ishquamanomenekewat. And when you see it written in double vowel, it took up most of the page, and I asked myself, who uses a word this long? What does this mean? Will I ever be able to pronounce it or even understand what they're talking about? And I saw that for the first time in my life. I had heard the most fascinating story about myself I had never been told. Pre-K through university, I had never heard the language, I had never heard about our people. Yeah, I got some. And we don't necessarily, I hope I'll have a chance to show you some of them. I'm cool doing it old school too. We have an oral tradition that dates back 30,000 years. So if we're hanging out talking to one another, I am just fine with that too. And so I went all in on Ojibwe. I was absolutely fascinated. It became the most exciting philosophical, ethical, spiritual journey that I had went on. And I had a chance to study with fluent first language speakers, with elders, with hereditary chiefs, as well as with the world's leading linguistic expert in the language. And when I started learning about the language, oh, there, really, all right. Let's go a couple of more ahead. We'll keep going. There's the mountain of ice. Like seriously, when it strikes me that I have ancestors who looked at that, I'm floored. We'll go to the next slide. There they are. Giant moose. How do you say moose in Ojibwe? Moose. That's. How do you say moccasin in Ojibwe? Moccasin. So there's a couple of ones. We'll go to the next one, please. There they are. The giant short-nosed bear. Man, he can run like 45 miles an hour. He was a big bully. He's not here anymore. Can we go to the next one, please? There's Andanakopichigan. And then let's go to this next slide. Onik. Then if you don't mind, maybe I'll go like this for the next slide. So I had a chance to work on the Ojibwe People's Dictionary. It's a landmark in indigenous lexicography. It is an iceberg too vast to be seen. And like if we had published it, it would be like this. It's online, so it's always growing. I had a chance to record and listen to fluent first language speakers, to elders, to those people who are carrying our language. And I started noticing patterns that were showing up in the language. So Unik was one, and I started looking in the dictionary and seeing all these patterns. Here's one, Unikinutage. It's to translate. It's to interpret. I've had a chance to do that a couple of times already this morning. It's to say a word in one language and then repeat that in the target language of your audience. Our next one is Anake Ogamakwe. It's very apropos to the current political situation. This is a vice chief, a vice president, a lieutenant governor. This is someone who fulfills the role of the leader if the current leader can no longer do so. And that kwe suffix means I'm speaking about a woman, so that could be a reference to Vice President Harris. It could also be Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, who's the first Indigenous woman in Minnesota to hold that position in our state. Yeah. If I don't mind my name dropping, when I was studying at University of Minnesota, she was the teacher's aide for Ojibwe culture and history while I was the teacher's aide, the TA for Ojibwe, so we worked in the same office. But it's always fun to run into her at events. Anekegama, there's a number of these where I grew up in north central Minnesota. Chains of lakes, bodies of water that are interconnected by bays, rivers, streams. And then Anakopedun, when you have run out of thread and you tie another piece of thread to it, you've interconnected them, you've interlinked them. So when I asked this one fluent first language speaker, a hereditary chief, what that meant to him. You know, he was really dragging it out. He was stroking his chin, thinking about it. And he said, you know, it's a lot like a bike chain. For him, this would be my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my parents, and myself. So if we look that word up in the dictionary, Anakobichigan, it can mean a couple of things. It can mean my great-grandparents. It can mean my ancestor. That person I was speaking about 13,000 or even 30,000 years ago. I can call him or her Indanako Bechigan. But if we were to spiritually and culturally interpret that word, I believe it means that being I'm inextricably interconnected to. That being I'm inextricably linked to. And in the Ojibwe language, it's also a word for my great-grandchild. We use the same term for one another. This is an image of, we call one another Indanako-Bichigan. So this was a petroglyph. It was carved into stone. You'll see petroglyphs around from where we are, from the ancient days at Cahokia. This is Nin, my child, Ngosis, my son, Indanis, my daughter. My grandchild, Nujis, and then my great-grandchild, Indanako Bichigan. And they call me Indanako Bichigan. So if we look at that word, logically, it implies 7 generations. 7 generations that are punctuated past, present, and future by this concept of I am inextricably linked to you. I'm inextricably interconnected to you. And whatever affects me is going to affect you. So the first time I understood this became very exciting. You know, as an Ojibwe teacher and an Ojibwe professor, I've taught pre-K through university, I would be asked, how do you say that? How do you say 7 generations in the Ojibwe language? And I'm like, that's too clumsy of a question. They handle it with one relative term. With one relative, Indanako Bichigan. The moment you say that, it implies 7 generations. My ancestor, my great-grandparent, my great-grandchild. And the first time that clicked, it made a lot of sense, and it brought up a number of teachings that take place both scientifically and spiritually all over the world. One of the first spiritual teachings that came up for me was the law of karma. This idea of sequence, this idea of interconnection. Maybe, does everyone in here recognize that word, karma? Sometimes we mistake it for the law of cause and effect. When you look at its root in Sanskrit, it has an ikri. It's your actions, your deeds. So you can develop good karma. Maybe you've acted with kindness, with generosity, altruistically, with benevolence. That is what's going to come back to you. Or maybe you've been mischievous or malevolent. Maybe you have a little bad karma coming back to you. But the idea is that your actions will have a reaction. And this shows up in so many Eastern Asian spiritual traditions. In the Middle East, particularly in the New Testament, we'll see this as you will reap what you sow. Whatever seed you put in the ground, that is the plant you should expect to grow. think Jesus is more explicit. He states, if you take up the sword, you will die by the sword. Your actions will have a reaction. From an indigenous perspective, this will have a reaction, that will have a reaction, that will have a reaction, that will echo through the generations. And we can recognize that too as a law of physics. And that for every action, it's going to be an equal reaction. And I have to tell you, the next time I saw a double helix, after I learned what that word meant in Danako Bichigan, to be interconnected, to be interlinked, I was floored. It made me ask myself, well, what did I inherit from my great-grandparents? What am I passing down to my great-grandchildren? It's my DNA. It's the very building blocks of my being. It made me ask myself, well, what was my great-grandfather's experience like? He was born literally 100 years before me. And in 1875, he saw a great deal of change in his life. He saw the creation of the Turtle Mountain Reservation. Now for him, this was a place he couldn't leave without express written consent from the Indian agent. If he did, he'd be deemed hostile. I think a more contemporary term for that is an enemy combatant. He could be arrested. He could actually be legally engaged by the United States Army, and he could be killed. That's where that term off the reservation comes from. So he loses his liberty, because he sees a great deal of change in his spiritual life. You know, I'm holding a Gashkibidagan. This has a Sema tobacco in it. Engi Nukwezige, I smudged earlier. I used the language. In his day and age, that was an arrestable offense. That was an arrestable offense until 1978. I was already a 3-year-old. The American Indian Religious Freedom Act was passed. And he wouldn't just do a night or two in jail. When you look at the law, it's 30 to 90 days. They were coming down very hard on the culture. They're coming down very hard on the spirituality. And if you are asking yourselves why I didn't hear the language until I was a 25-year-old man, there's a very good reason for that. He would see a great deal of change in his family structure. His daughter, my grandmother, would go to a residential school in Canada. My mother would go to a boarding school here in the United States. Now, these were total institutions. These were places that the clothes you wear, the language you speak, when you pray, the books you read, when you line up to go outside, when you go to the bathroom, when you eat, when you drink, everything is determined for you by the institution. And everyone here is familiar with two perfect examples of total institutions. One would be the military, the other prison. And so when they were going to school, it was very hard. The mandate of the boarding schools for them was to kill the Indian in order to save the man. That was the mandate from the very beginning all the way into the 80s and 90s, 1980s, 1990s. And a number of children did not survive the boarding school experience. In Canada, we know that they found at least 10,000 kids who just did not survive. It's the same story here in the United States when they began catching up. And when those kids went through that boarding school experience, some did not survive. Others that did not have a very positive experience. And it reminds me of a number of elders I had a chance to meet, all of them who had been boarding school survivors, residential school survivors. And when I would bring them tobacco and ask them for help, how can I learn the language more in depth? How can I learn it more profoundly, more rapidly? They would tell me that the language was already in you. The language is in you. It is in your blood memory. And I hadn't heard that term. I was a graduate student. I was in a very scientific discipline, linguistics, which is a scientific study of language. But I didn't discount it. It was something I had heard from elders time and time again, was that science is going to catch up with what we're saying. And I've seen it happen time and time again. They said it's in your blood memory. And so I didn't discount it. Later, I would see a term that would change what they meant. Can we go to the next one? It was using a different term. is the idea of intergenerational trauma. And what I had learned, looking at the science and study of epigenetics, was that if you go through something incredibly stressful, incredibly traumatic, particularly when you are a child. Now, my mother was 5 years old when she went to school. She was removed from her home and put into the residential school. My grandmother was 6. I recall sending my son to school during COVID, which was in our living room with an iPad, and I couldn't imagine him being removed from our home, putting in a dormitory. And, some of the haunting words and memories from those survivors was the crying at first, that the whole dorm would be crying because they were in a brand new situation with a language they didn't understand, with people they didn't know. And so many of those students also went through trauma. They went through emotional, mental, spiritual, physical, and sexual trauma at these institutions. And the idea with epigenetics is that if you go through something incredibly traumatic at that moment, the chemicals your body will create while you are going through that have the potential to literally alter your DNA. It will change the way you deal with joy, with excitement, with anxiety, with anger, and it has altered your DNA. You have the opportunity to pass this down to the next generation. So when I looked at myself and my generation in Minneapolis, I was asking myself questions because we're dealing with a number of problems. The opioid epidemic, methamphetamine abuse, unsafe sexual practices, gambling, chronic overspending, internet addiction. Why is our generation dealing with this? I had the chance to learn the language in school. I can pray any time I like without any fear at all of persecution or prosecution. I can choose to live anywhere I'd like in the United States. Why are we dealing with that? And we may have a generation of people who are dealing with someone's pain that is not their own, who are dealing with pain that they have inherited from someone else. And the reason I speak about this is the moment we recognize that we may be dealing with someone's pain. And this is not just indigenous people, this is a human condition. The moment we realize we may be dealing with someone's intergenerational trauma, the moment we see that, that can be a catalyst for healing. The moment we become aware of it. The moment we say, I'm going to begin healing, I am not passing this down to the next generation. I know I'm interconnected to them, I know I'm interlinked with them, I am not passing this down, I am going to do the healing. Thank you. I see a lot of healing taking place in here. And I think it's a really important point right now to make that we didn't just inherit trauma, that we are here despite yet another pandemic, that we are all here in 2024. And especially that I've had the opportunity to share these words with such a diverse audience. It shows me that we have inherited courage, strength, resilience, fortitude. And that's what I want to pass down to the generations who are coming. We have that opportunity in a place like this. So the first time this made sense, this was very exciting. I was like, I get it. I had heard it from so many people. Oh, get to know it. 7 generations. Think 7 generations ahead. And I remember walking into a school in South Minneapolis, Center School. It's an American Indian Magnet school. And as I was walking in, there was an elder who was giving a course that night. And he nudged me and he asked me, do you understand this concept of 7 generations? And I was like, yeah, I've heard of it. He's like, it's very simple. It's all in the language. It's all in language. And he began speaking about when he grew up. He grew up in Lake of the Woods in northwestern Ontario. And he recalled meeting Gete Anishinaabe. His translation was old-time Indian. People who were born in lodges, people who were born on trap lines, in cabins. The people would see the first automobiles, first airplanes, that whole generation of people. And he noted that when they reached a certain age, when they became elders, I love the word elder in Ojibwe. It's Gichi Aya'a. Gichi Aya'a literally means a great being. So to be great in Anishinaabe Moan, it wasn't reserved for a conqueror, it wasn't reserved for someone wealthy, it was reserved for someone who had the gift of long life. And they would use for old woman Mindamuye. And it has in it minj, to hold, and uye is the being, the one who holds us all together. It's the old woman. And the old man is Akiwenzi, the one who comes from the earth, the one who has been fed, healed, nourished, clothed, sheltered. And he has become the earth, and the earth is him. He is from the earth. He said when they reached a certain age, they would try to avoid using that middle word, nin, I, me, myself. And earlier I said I had the chance to study Latin a little bit in middle school. And when I translated that word into Latin, it's one you'll all recognize. Everyone here has dealt with someone who's egotistical, egocentric, maybe even egomaniacal. Someone who is striving to become more accomplished, more wealthy, more cultured, more attractive, more than you. I'm looking out for me. I'm looking out for number one. And what I saw those elders, by trying to avoid using that word doing, was saying that from an Ojibwe perspective, this idea of ego, this idea of I, me, myself, it might be a myth, it might be illusory. For them, I'm interconnected. I'm interlinked. For them, the spiritual teaching was only Kije Manadu, only the kind spirit, only the benevolent mystery, only the creator, only God says I, excluding you. Human beings can't. We're interconnected. We're interlinked. So for them, they would say, I am all of my relatives. And all of my relatives are me. I'm inextricably interconnected to them. Now this was a very exciting moment for me in Dinawe Maganadok. Gedinawendamin, it's the verb. I'm all related. If I say in Dinawe Maganadok, I'm addressing all of them. I'm addressing the entire universe. But this clicked. It was very exciting because from my first Ojibwe class, I had been hearing that 7 generations act in a way that's positive for someone 7 generations. You're all related. We're all interconnected. And at this moment, I had scientific and spiritual proof that every single choice, action, and decision that I make, and not just me, if you are in the audience listening, if you are online watching, every single thing, choice, action, and decision we make has the potential to affect someone that we'll never see, speak to, listen to, or hold. And that was powerful. And that joy and that excitement, it was short-lived because it was replaced by this awesome feeling that was welling and rising within me. And for me, it was the birth of responsibility. Because I wanted to be kind to these people, although I know I'll never see them, I'll never talk to them, I'll never speak to them, I'll never hold them. I want to be kind to you. My question was no longer, why am I here? The language and the culture had answered that. I'm here because I'm related. I'm here because I'm inextricably interconnected. They always knew we were going to be here together in 2024. It was no longer, why am I here? It became how. How do I live in a way that can bring peace and balance to all of my relatives? How can I live without conflict with my relatives or my environment, my ecosystem? How can I lead a holistic life? A life where my actions are in alignment with my thoughts and my words. People all over the world have been asking this question. This is Mahavira. And in the Jain faith, he spoke of moksha or mukti, liberation from that cycle of karma that kept him reincarnating lifetime after lifetime. For the Buddha, this was nibbana. That's in the language he spoke in Pali. In the language of the priest, it becomes nirvana. He had put out the flames of desire. He was no longer reaching for it. He was no longer thirsting for it. He had found peace. For Lao Tzu, he lived in accordance with the Tao. He went along with the natural flow of the universe. Socrates, in the marketplaces of ancient Greece, spoke of living the examined life. For him, the unexamined life wasn't worth living. Jesus found within himself that divine spark, the kingdom of heaven. And our ancestors spoke of Minopamatsuan, the good life, a life of peace, a life of balance, life without conflict or contradiction. And that's a verb. Most of the words we'll speak about from here on out are verbs. They're ways of being, they're ways of acting. There's a way of of relating. So minopamatsi can mean she or he lives well. She or he leads a good life. Natural consequence of that is she or he is healthy. And it's an ancient word. It's not a reaction to people coming here. These are some of our sister languages. Odawa and Potawatomi, Budewatmi, would say minopamatsi. Our Cree brothers and sisters would say minopamatsu or miopamatsu. Now it takes a long time for one word to become the same word in a number of languages. A long time. So, just to give you some perspective, the first time the Buddha spoke of the Four Noble Truths, when Jesus gave the Sermon on the Mount, when Socrates was in the ancient marketplaces of Athens arguing and debating, our ancestors were here at a place like Cahokia, seeking out minopamatsuin. How do we do it? How can we live with one another? And they left us a way to do that. Mepamatsi. And you guys, I get so involved with this, and I'm so excited to speak to all of you. I don't want to go over on time. How many minutes about? 10? 10. All right. No, because here's the thing. This is the goal of my life, is just to have an opportunity to share these things with people. So I really get into it that you've listened to this. So Bamatsi, to live, it's to go along in space or time. And so it's like, and we use this in our everyday Ojibwe words. You start at one place, if you bimose, if you bimi batu, if you bimise, it is, if you go on a walk, if you go on a run, if you fly, you start at one location, you go along in space and time, and you end up somewhere else. And we do this with life, and this began to make sense. So Bamatsi, we have a beginning. We're born. We go through these 4 stages of life, where the Abenuji ends, where the infant, where the baby, where the Abenuji, where the Ikwezens or Guizens, where the boy or the girl. If we become Inini or Ikwe, a man or a woman. We get families of our own. And if we are gifted with long life, we may be fortunate enough to become Gichiaya, to become elders, to become those old men and old women who hold our communities together. And that made sense. That clicked. We have a beginning, we go through this process, and we end. And there was this moment that radically shifted the way I look at this word minopamatsi. Bamatsi, to live. And it was my first year of Ojibwe. My professor was taking me to a sweat lodge ceremony. And along the way, he said, we're going to stop at the hospital and visit. There's an old man there, a Gete Anishinaabe, a fellow who had literally been born in a wigwam, in a Waginogan, and he was at the end of his life. He was far away from home. He was in the middle of this urban metropolis by himself. And he said, we're going to visit, this is proper Ojibwe culture, it's to go and visit the sick and the aged. So we went and visited him, and it would take me years later to realize how happy he must have been to be able to hear his language one more time, maybe at the end of things. To visit, I could barely understand. This is my first year of Ojibwe, but I remember when my professor told him, oh yeah, we're going to go sweat, and he was like, Minwain Dogwood, that's good. It's well thought of. And as we were leaving, my professor and I were getting in the elevator, and he said, in his day and age, they didn't call this nipple. They didn't call this death. They had a different word for it. They called it giwe. Here she is going home. Here she is returning. And the moment I heard that, that radically shifted the way I look at that word to live. It was no longer we're born, we live, and we die. It was something eternal, whatever it is that animates us, whatever it is that's mysterious. In Ojibwe, the word for spirit, manadu, it also means mystery, something incomprehensible, something ununderstandable. For me, to live, it meant that the eternal was moving through the impermanent. And I was floored by that whatever it is going through me, it is born, it has a human experience, then at the end of things, returns home, returns from whence it came. And I was like, that radically shifted the way I look at that word. So it made me ask, well, what does minnow mean? What does it mean to be good? And I know from some perspectives we have good and evil. There's another story that I would love to share with you that comes from this image. And this image shows up all over in North America. In fact, if you were to look at the flag of Mexico, you'll notice that there's a serpent and a raptor. And there was an old man who told the story at the north part of Lake Winnipeg. He was describing this image that shows up. It's the serpent and the thunderbird. And he said, these two are always found together. They're always fighting one another. He didn't necessarily kind of use that word fighting. They're always engaged with one another. And then he pointed out that if the thunderbird, Benesi, does not hunt the giant serpents will overpopulate and overrun the world. They'll become uninhabitable by anyone, including themselves. However, if the giant serpent does not feed the thunderbird can't exist. So what we see at one level as being conflict is actually the maintenance of balance. They are living with one another. They're inseparable. We see them as two different things, but really they can't live without one another. Minnow, for his perspective, was being in balance. So for me, Minnow Pamatsuin, this is an indigenous perspective of a yin-yang. We see this in different Asian spiritual traditions. So for me, if I were to translate this word, Minnow Pamatsuin, to you, it would mean that the eternal is moving through the impermanent in complete peace, that peace which comes from being in balance in its environment. And for me, the question became, how? How do I do that? How can I lead that life? And I'm fortunate enough that our ancestors have left us away. Those ones we call Indana Kobichigan, those ones we're inextricably interconnected to. And they called it the Gichi-Debak-Konegewanan. And also called the Gagiye-Nak-Konegewanan. They share this one humorous note. I had a chance to speak in Treaty 3 a number of times. It's a northern part of Canada. And when I used this term, Debak-Konege, there were always these not fluent first language speakers, but guys in the audience who started nudging each other and laughing, and yeah, you know that word. If we look at a modern context of that, dib, it's to speak about, it's to measure. Akon is with a wood-like article in your hand. The modern meaning of that, it's a judge. These were all men who had run-ins with the law and had been sentenced. The gavel was the wooden part that they were holding. The gagige, or the dib, was what they were speaking about. But if we look at a pre-contact meaning of that word, what they're actually speaking about. Let me go to the next slide. What happened? It's the pipe stem. From the sacred pipe, from the Opwagan. It's one of our most sacred gifts. It was a tool, an implement, a relative that we were given to ask for help with, to pray with. That means what we're about to speak about with the Gichi-Debak-Konegewan is something that's been meditated upon and mediated with our most sacred gift. That our sacred medicines were there. The asema, the tobacco, the wingushk, the sweetgrass, the mushkare washk, bashkare jibik, the sage, and the gijik, the cedar, were all there. This was something that was debated with our most sacred medicines. And I would translate that word, Gichi-Debak-Konegew, as the great law, as the sacred law. And we also call these the 7 grandfather teachings. One elder had pointed out that that word, Gagiye-Nak-Konegewan, eternal law. It's always been this way. And that word, Inak-Konege, it's literally to point the pipe stem in each of the directions. We also call these the 7 grandfather teachings. There's Deboywan truth, Dabasain Dizawin humility, Nachiyatuan respect, Sakiyatuan unconditional love, Zungide Ewan strength of heart, courage, Manachiyatuan respect, Guaikwa Dizawin virtue, righteousness, honesty, and Nibwa Kawan and wisdom. And if we're able to lead a life like that, then we will find a way that is positively beneficial, not just for us, but for all of our relatives. And I can't wait to have an opportunity to tell you what those words really mean in the Ojibwe language. And I want to take a moment and say this properly. Miigwech Bizendawieg. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for having me here with you for this part. I am so excited to continue speaking about something that has radically changed my life, and I hope, as you go into discussions, as you leave, you wonder how you can act in a way that is positively beneficial for someone 7 generations from now. I have to tell you, I'm a Gen X, but I live in a very, self-centered society. We focus a lot on ourselves. I take selfies and make videos of myself all the time, and it's not lost on me that I might be being self-centered, but maybe as you're going into discussions today to think about, has that changed the way I look at the world? At someone I'm inextricably interconnected to. From an Indigenous perspective, that my actions, choices, and decisions right now have the potential to affect them. For me, often, rather than belaboring someone with that, it's the moment you see it. You see that different perspective. Does that change the way you begin leading your life? And again, I want to take a moment and say, Miigwech Bizendawieg. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Miigwech. Thank you. Here's the time. Miigwech.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. From my heart to yours. I'm just reflecting on that interconnection, that inextricable interconnection that we all have. And my learning of that has come through Ubuntu. I spoke of that earlier. The South African way of life, I am because we are, and I wrote a poem about that I feel connects. It's called Humanity, Ubuntu. And I wrote this piece when I was working with some youth. We were writing, and we were talking about superpowers, how to change the world. And we concluded after coming up with all these wild, crazy superpowers, like one kid said he would end world hunger by shooting spaghetti out of his fingers, right, if he could have superpowers. Right, I thought that was pretty cool. We're pretty creative, right? Kids are brilliant. But we concluded after going through all these possibilities that one of the greatest superpowers, that's a real superpower that we actually already have, is love. Right? And so that's what this piece is about, that love that we all have that we can cultivate within ourselves and within each other. That's the greatest superpower we have that connects us all. If I could have any superpower in the world, it would be to make everyone everywhere feel true empathy. Not just some simple, sentimental, emotional coexistence, no, but a deep, heart-wrenching, soul-clutching conviction to feel as another feels, to see as another sees, to breathe not only the same air, with the same lungs another breathes. Life. A life lived with instead of against. Then we would truly understand what it means to understand. Learning to let mercy have the upper hand. Not splintered in self-centeredness, but our family's reunion, remembering, remending into intimacy, so intimate link that we begin to befriend even our enemies. As the strong defend the weak, bowing to empower the gentle and the meek. Muslim, Jew, and Christian, poor and rich, soldiers and politicians, mothers, fathers, and children will all change position, not of opposition, but walking in opposite skin. Likewise, eyes exchanging vision to we bear the single burden of sharing the same difference. The only superhuman ability we really need is the instilling a universal vulnerability. For the truest form of nobility is to exchange harm with help, or hate with humility. To trade revenge and retaliation with forgiveness and relation. If we see no space for love, then it is our choice to make one. And until that day comes, we will sing the same song of one hope, one blood, many nations, many tongues, many languages, but one love, many tribes, many races, but one family, humanity. Thank you. Who's got next? Thank you. I'll turn it over.
Testing. Thanks. And Naney. So I'm going to walk us through the day because there's a lot going on, and I don't get to talk to you again until tonight, so we're just going to cover everything. But first, if at any point you go walkabout in the woods, try to stay on the property. It is hunting season. And we got a call from one of the farmers next door yesterday that said, I have hunters out of my field, and I see some of your guys out there. So don't get shot, please. Stick to the trails if you're in the woods. All right, so councils at 10:30. Workshops at 1. Check the signs on the doors. We've shuffled a couple of them around. Your schedules aren't entirely accurate, so just when you go to the one that you picked, double check the sign on the door that it's the right one. Right after that, well, around at 2:15, we have a number of info sessions. If you're curious about other things we have going on in Illuman, other things that we do, ways to engage, ways to build and continue growing. A1, and this is going to be check the doors because your schedule's wrong. A1 is going to be about the men's rites of passage. A2 is going to be the elder rites of passage. A3 will be the youth rites of passage. So if any of those appeal to you, you're curious about, these sessions will only be about half an hour. It's not like a long workshop. It's just enough to hear about it and ask some questions. A4 is going to be some other Illumin programs, our cohorts, like the Howling at the Moon cohort, if you've heard about that, or our 47 online cohort for men like me that are hitting midlife, that point where you can stand at the peak and see your beginning and your end. And maybe you're freaking out a little bit, like me. I turned 46 in 2 weeks. And then A5, I will be leading a session on this new course that we've created. It's a council training course, how to lead and start your own council circle like we've been doing this weekend. But more than that, a small group, we're calling them journey circles, men that journey through life together, that take the journey of illumination together. If you're hungry for friends, if you're hungry for men that you can walk shoulder to shoulder with and do life together with and support one another, that's what we're trying to help you create. So if you're curious about how to do that and what these courses involve, come to A5. 3 p.m., I know this is a lot. 3 p.m., it's our altar ritual. Bring your ofrendas. We're going to do a Walmart run because I think a few of you weren't able to get candles and we're all out. Raise your hand if you still need a candle for your ofrenda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 19. Okay. All right. We don't know if the Walmart has them because they don't pick up their phones. So we're just going to go and see. So no promises, but if we can get it, then check back after lunch and we'll put them out on the table. Okay, this is a lot, I know. State dinner tonight, 6 p.m., so dinner's a little bit later. We're going to have flags and names of your states on the tables. Sit at one where you live. It's a chance to meet other men in your area, to connect with guys that maybe you can continue to connect with when you go home. And then come back here this evening at, well, I don't remember the exact time, but you got a schedule. At 7, I think, for our Fire Stoker gathering. This is our special gathering. We're going to be honoring our grandfathers, men over 80 especially.
And then we're going to have a special message from Father Rohr, Richard Rohr. He obviously couldn't be here with us. He doesn't travel a lot anymore, but we interviewed him, did a special recording just for this, and so it's powerful. You won't want to miss it. So I think that's everything. Anything else? Any questions? Yeah. You don't have to worry about it. Just check the doors. We'll have signs. We have signs for British Columbia, for Ontario, and for Australia. So look for that. If I've missed your country, let me know.
Council circlers are going to meet right over there to get your prompts for the council that will happen right now after this experience. And we had such a great time with the Queering Illuman small group that the guys wanted to continue that. But it really is going to be more of a getting into passion circles. So we're going to put a sheet out there. If you can send an email or tell us your email there, because we didn't do a sign up in our workshop. We're going to start and renew the, we're going to call it something more fun, but than Men of the Rainbow. But yeah, it's going to be a queer-focused passion circle for Illuman. So we want to keep together and keep doing this work. So, yeah.
James also has his books for sale in the marketplace, so it's a great chance to buy the book.
Yeah, let me do it on a microphone, okay? Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Kagegabo will be out signing books, seven grandfather teachings in the marketplace around break times, kind of thing. And if you would like a Joe Davis book, talk to Joe. Give him a piece of paper with the name and an email and what you want signed. Okay. Yeah, and Joe has 3 books. Do you want to talk about what you have? Come. That's okay. You can use this.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks. Thanks. Just real briefly, so I do have.
Every time we have another party,
Yeah.
another book.
Right. Yeah. So I have 3 books out, and so I actually sold out of them before this gathering at a previous gathering that I was at, and so I guess that's a good problem to have. But if you all would like to get some of them, I'll have a sign-up sheet out at the table over there. I have some cards that are already out there. I'll put the sign-up sheet next to it, and if you would like a book, just give me your email, and then I can. So that's if you want to get a signed copy, and you can email me, and we can figure out how to work out the payment. You can just buy it on my website. But if you want to get copies without my signature on it, which is totally cool too, you can. It's just easy to get it like on Barnes and Noble or Amazon or the publishing company Spark House. So, but if you want to get a signed copy, I'll have a sign-up sheet for it out there. So.
Awesome.
Just clarification about passion circles. These are like online council circles with a focus, but it's not something you have to sign up for ahead of time. It's not something you have to commit to, like, I'm going to show up every week for 2 months. It's just a show up as you're able, as you're interested, whenever you're interested. It's for anyone. And if you're curious about other ones, there's a flyer over on the Illuman table. We got, I don't know, like a dozen of them now. So that's it, right? All right, go in peace, and council circles at 10:30.